Okay, thank you. Thank you for attending the Community Scrutiny Review Board meeting today. Could I ask that Dominic Moonhan takes a roll call, please, of all members and officers connected with the meeting?
Yep.
Thank you.
So I'm Dominic Monaghan. I'm the Democratic Services Officer for this meeting. With me, we've got Lindsay Stevens and Stephen Mason. They're also from Democratic Services. And then we've got Andy Thomas, who's the presenting officer for this meeting. And then if the councillors would like to introduce themselves, please. Councillor Atwell.
Yes, Councillor Atwell present.
Councillor Nawaz.
Yes, present, yeah.
Councillor Testro.
Oh, good evening. Yeah, I'm here.
Councillor Pearce.
Yeah, Councillor Jerry Pearce, yep.
Councillor Hudson.
Yep, I'm here.
Councillor Khan.
Sorry, did you call me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not on the committee. I'm just watching, but I'm here, yeah.
Yeah. And then the chair, Councillor Pegg.
Yes, I'm here, Dominic. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
We're already able to proceed now, Dominic.
Yep, we don't have any apologies, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any late items. Do we have any declarations of interest, please? No. In that case, then, move on to the minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of January 2020. Obviously, I wasn't chair or on the committee. Was those that are present, any of those that are present?
Move as printed, Chair, please.
Thank you very much indeed. I agree with that then. And so can we move on to the item 5, which is the Public Protection Officer's update? And I believe that Andy Thomas is giving us an update on that. Are you there, Andy?
Sorry. No, I'm back on. I'm on. So everybody can hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay. So I thought I'd give you an update on the following the request from the chair, an update on the Public Protection Officer service. I think probably in principle over the last 6 months since COVID, and then since today, really, where I've formally took over the management and the leadership of that team as of today. So on the one hand, I think we can talk about some of the positives that have gone on over the last 6 months, some of the challenges that we've got moving forward, and certainly I'll be interested to hear members' views and this committee's views as to where our priorities lie and the direction of that service, because I think a lot has changed since that original cabinet report, since that original proposal. So if I talk a little bit about where we started from. So if we remember, we started off by seconding a relatively few number of staff from Nottingham, and they were focused primarily to respond to environmental crime and environmental issues in the inner city, predominantly Normanton, Arboretum, Abbey, Sinfin sort of areas, but predominantly Normanton, Arboretum. And that had a big impact, and they were successful. We then decided to second a few more officers from Nottingham, whose service has been running good 10-12 years. They have somewhere between 140 160 of these what they call community protection officers, which are a combination of what our PPOs do and civil enforcement officers as well, so it's not quite the same model. So we seconded some more, and that was based around the city centre really, antisocial behaviour concerns in the city centre, and putting in some extra PPOs. So I think we ended up with 8 that were seconded from Nottingham. We then got to a position where we wanted to expand the service, and that was that formed the basis of the what would be the cabinet report in 2019, early 2019. Councillor Cope? Well, yeah.
March the 13th. Yeah.
Okay, right, and that laid out a number of things. I think it laid out the expansion and to a degree, the direction of the service. But I think subsequent to that, we've learnt an awful lot of lessons in terms of how effective that service should be and how it should work. So there are a number of premises that cabinet report were predicated on. I think some of those things have proved to be challenging and difficult. So the budget situation put an awful lot of pressure on the service to raise revenue, income through parking fines. That's not come to fruition for a number of reasons that you may want to go into, but I think the general view now amongst officers, and of course let's remember that the officers who wrote that original cabinet report and implemented the original service unfortunately are no longer with us. I think there were some principles within that paper report that have proved very, very difficult to implement. The expectation around parking income was very high and would have in effect shaped the service. I think it was discussed and it was titled as an extension to neighbourhood working, but the service quite quickly became a single entity and didn't get coordinated very well, didn't get joined up with neighbourhood teams, with the local safer neighbourhood police teams, with Street Pride, with a whole range of different council departments and services, and partners services importantly. We then had some challenges around the management of that. The team leader was suspended, and we had some internal wranglings within the team, and I think it was heading, probably for me, heading in the wrong direction certainly after Christmas this year. A positive, ironically, then came along, which was COVID and the lockdown. And what that meant was that the whole premise of the service had to change. They became one of the few council services alongside Street Pride that was still fully functioning. Out there every day, weekends, with the public, educating and engaging primarily around social distancing, some enforcement work. But if you remember back to that March period, it was a real challenge for us as local government to ensure that the national guidelines, that government advice was actually adhered to. And the PPOs did an absolutely fantastic job. So moved away from enforcement, moved away from a lot of the work around antisocial behaviour and in environmental protection and parking and things like that, and primarily focused on engaging the public, educating the public, and being the council's front-facing response to ensure that the virus, that the pandemic didn't spread in Derby. And we've had some good results around that. They were very much linked in with the community hub and food provision that you'll all be aware of. And they really were on the front foot and front facing around that March time as lockdown came upon us. And that's when I started to get more directly involved with the PPO service. Now I think what it proved is that their key skill and their key attribute is not just around visibility and reassurance, but is actually talking to people, trying to solve problems, trying to engage, trying to educate, but with that extra tool that we all wanted around enforcement and being able to make that impact if people won't engage and if people won't educate. So won't be educated. So we're now in that period of time, sort of post-lockdown, life sort of getting back to normal, where the service requires a reshaping and the service requires a redirection. I think there are some givens. There are some givens in terms of that's our council, our main visible, alongside Street Pride, our main visible service, uniformed, with the public, in the community, providing that reassurance, providing that visibility. I think we need to get back to that, some of that core offer around dealing with low-level antisocial behaviour, dealing with low-level crime issues, dealing with environmental problems. That I think has got to be the main focus forward. Certainly working more closely with other council services, because I think they've been quite isolated and worked in a silo really. And I certainly want them not only to be working more effectively with council services, but with partners, whether that be Derby Homes, whether that be the police. And I've already just today started to put in some new arrangements about how they're tasked, how we report, how we gather intelligence, how we work more closely with the police in terms of tasking, how we work more closely with Derby Homes in terms of supporting them in keeping their estates clean, tidy, and well ordered. So there are a number of challenges as we stand. One is resetting the focus and getting those PPOs, getting that PPO service what we all want it to be, and I've touched on some of those things. We've had some internal challenges within the service. Let's not hide those. We've had a number of disciplinary issues. We've lost 2 to dismissal. We've still got 1 on suspension. So there are issues within that team. I've got to work out the right structure. I've got to work the right leadership. I've been given that job as of today. I've brought in a new manager, a woman called Sharon Booth, who some of you, well, most of you I'm sure will know. So Sharon's come in to work with me to manage that team day to day. We had our first tasking meeting this morning. People seem really positive. People seem really up for it. So there's some personnel stuff to deal with. There's some HR stuff to deal with. But for me, it's about getting them doing the right things, getting them directed in the right way, getting them close as possible to you as councillors, because you know my views. You guys know what's happening in your communities. You know what's happening in your neighbourhoods. I want to be hearing a lot more from you about issues, about problems that PPOs can either solve on their own or help other agencies and other services problem solve and contribute to some of those solutions. So I think this is an apt time to discuss the service because it's come over to me. We're looking for a new direction. There's some really good stuff that's been going on in the last 4, 5, 6 months, and there's some stuff that's not been so good in the last 4, 5, 6 months. But I think tonight's an opportunity to share some of those, and for me to get your views around the direction where you think those priorities should lie. So that's a bit of an update on where we've got to, where we are, and what I'm looking to achieve as we move forward. So any questions about that or questions about future direction? I'm more than happy to have that conversation, Chair.
Yeah, no, I think there's 1 or 2 questions. I've had one from Councillor Atwell. Can you just clarify how many PPOs started and how many do we have at this present time? Can you clarify that for us, please, Andy?
Yeah, I'm just doing my maths. So we have 20 on the establishment, which is 1 team leader, 2 seniors, and 17 PPOs. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we currently have a team leader who is suspended. We have only 1 senior neighbourhood officer who's currently just had a shoulder operation, Jordan. He's off sick, recuperating. And then of the 17 PPOs, we currently have 3 or 4 vacancies because of people who have left or have been dismissed.
So in actual fact then...
So that's the establishment.
Yeah. So in actual fact we've only got 14 PPOs.
At the minute, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Are you happy with that, Councillor?
Yeah. Can I just come in,
Yes,
please, Chair? Thank you. Andy, just a couple of questions. The team leaders that have been suspended, I mean, what's the situation? Are we still paying them as a council while they're off work, or are you looking at bringing them back in? Where do we stand? Obviously, because if they're not at work, it's costing us money, and we need to bring people in, because obviously we're down on the numbers.
Yeah.
And the numbers make the difference in the wards, especially in wards like you said, RB, Arboretum and Normanton, where it's a lot more than, say, perhaps some other wards. So where do we stand with that?
Yeah, there's a process. Obviously, I can't share too much in a public meeting.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
But that's being progressed. I've been told I've got a HR meeting tomorrow morning where I'll be getting an update on where we are. So I'll be using a fair bit of energy to try and resolve that team leader role. But you're right. I mean, while somebody's off work, they're being paid, and that hits the budget. So what I didn't mention is that as part of my challenge and part of my task is that I'll be reviewing that management structure. Do we actually need that level of management, and is there a different way, more effective way, more efficient way of managing that service? So that's something I'll be considering. Can we get better value by integrating it into other services and making them work more in partnership, that might avoid us having to incur management costs? So that's something I'll be looking for. It may well be that at the end of the review that structure stays the same, but I'm open to looking at options.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hudson.
Thank you, Councillor Pegg. Just before these were introduced, I met up with our PPO in Derwent and the neighbourhood officer to just sit down and try and put some ground rules in place and how we were going to communicate.
Yeah.
It became obvious quite quickly there was no guidance, and what we could actually be reporting is very, very sensitive. So we ad hoc agreed that I would CC the neighbourhood officer into any email communication, and the neighbourhood officer would CC me in, just so there was some kind of fallback if there was any questions on what was the content of those emails. Yeah. Then to streamline it, we said we were going to invite them to the neighbourhood board, which takes place every 2 months, so there was some kind of formal process. Well, that all seems to have gone to the wind. Nothing's happened like it should have happened. Can we have some kind of published guidance for officers and councillors so we know what we can put in those emails, and if there's some protocol just to cover everybody's back?
Yeah, you mean in terms of what information you can share, what you can share?
Because okay. if we're reporting things and they get challenged, those emails could actually come through a freedom of information request, and there was no guidance at all on how to actually approach. So we just had to agree, if we were to do that, to CC each other in so somebody else actually saw what was in them. Okay.
Leave that with me. I mean, picking up. I mean, it's only today that I've formally picked the service up, but some of the gaps we've got around training and development, some of the gaps we've got around information sharing, around tasking, around working in partnership, around some of the operating procedures for the staff. There are quite a lot of gaps, and that's something we'll be talking to the staff about and everybody else about how we can plug some of those gaps. But that's certainly something we need to. I mean, there'll be a straightforward solution, Councillor Hudson, and I'm not one for overcomplicating things, but leave that with me. We'll put something out. I mean, I think for me, that leads to a wider issue about how well integrated and how well joined up the PPO services with the neighbourhood teams, safer neighbourhood teams, and I think for me it's a long way from where I want it to be. And I think it's a long way from where it needs to be. So, again, one of my challenges is to integrate the work we do more closely with the police in terms of sharing information, sharing intelligence, them supporting us or supporting them. And I've agreed to start that conversation today with the police. And similarly with the neighbourhood officers, I think we've seen in some neighbourhoods good relationships. Based on sort of personality and individuals. In other parts of the city, not so good. So we need the proper framework. And I want to see our neighbourhood officers, our PPOs, our safe and neighbourhood teams. When I say our, I mean it's our city. I'm not interested in who runs them or who pays for them. It's our city. They're our people out there on the front line, and I want them to be shoulder to shoulder and working closely with you. And those three services particularly, and Derby homes when they've got a lot of tenants, we need to be really better joined up. What are the problems? What are the key issues? And let's solve these together, because I don't think it's not joined up enough. And if people aren't tasked properly, and if people aren't busy, if people aren't effective, idle hands. Yeah. And I think we've had a little bit of that perhaps post lockdown. So I'm absolutely onto it. And your specific point, Councillor Hudson, I'll pick up and get back to you, and then share that with the councillors. And I think at some point we'll need to come back to the neighbourhood boards or whatever framework you've got in your own wards to say, do you know what, this is the new way. We've gone through some challenges, but we're back on track and start to rebuild some of those partnerships.
Okay, thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Councillor Atwell, you want to come back in again?
I did, yeah. I mean, I tell you what the cause for concern for me is, Andrew, as you know, I've had some fantastic PPOs within my ward, and for some unfortunate reason, I think 2 have been sacked and 1's left through stress. So I had no hesitation any time there was an issue, and thankfully I've had some fantastic resource, fixed penalty notices where people have been caught red-handed, and they'll be fine because these guys have been on top of the game. And at the moment, I mean, as a typical example today, I took up there in my own van because somebody dumped something. Obviously, the street pride won't go and pick it up because it was on private ground, so I wasn't prepared to go get my hands dirty to see what was inside letter-wise. So I had to pick it up, chuck it in my trade bin. But this is the kind of service we're missing out on. I know it's not a nice thing to find somebody, but you've got to draw a line in the sand. And with these PPOs, they were actually, I mean, I had no issues with them. Every time there was an issue in my ward, they got on top of it, and like some fantastic result. So I think we need to revisit ASAP, because I think if we are losing PPOs, we're doing a disservice to our ward residents, because they expect it of us. We've set a standard now, especially everywhere. When there's something happening, they expect somebody to come out, and if nobody at the moment's coming out, they're thinking, well, hold on a minute, it was working, all of a sudden it's not working, and that kind of leaves us as councillors in a very awkward situation, because what are we supposed to do? That's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, I think with all these issues, particularly around the environment and antisocial behaviour, once you take your foot off the gas, you take your foot off the pedal, it would very, very quickly go back to where you started from. And I think that's the beauty of having a PPO service that's visible, that's high profile. I mean, Councillor Atwell, I think we've seen changes, and I think, if I'm honest, I think for a lot of us, for a lot of managers, this is a service the type of service that we're not necessarily used to managing, and I'm relishing it actually, because I love getting involved, and the guys that we've got, there's some fantastic people that have got some great skills, and I don't think they've necessarily been right. Yeah, the team's not been right. I'm not sure the level of management and tasking has been right. So I'm really confident that in the next few weeks we'll start to see that again. And I need, I'm not with them all the time as a manager, obviously. I need councillors particularly to be telling me, that's working, that's not working, that's good, that's not good. So I know Councillor Atwell, you will always do that, and we appreciate that. But I really want to make sure that these guys are really on it, and they're accountable to you. So the more feedback I can get, the better, really.
Councillor Nawaz, you got a question?
Yeah, just hi, Andy. We weren't sort of given a PPO for a long time. As who is our PPO recently? We've just had Seb.
Yeah.
Are you going to make it better? Like, are there going to be 2 PPOs in an area, or still 1?
I think we need to be more flexible, and we need to be more problem focused. So. My background, what I do, and we need to use this limited resource in the right way. So I accept it's a citywide service, and we need that breadth and we need that visibility, but we also need to be where the problems are. So I want to be a lot more flexible to ensure that, yeah, we're providing a citywide service and we've got coverage, but also that we've not got people wandering around, just wandering around. There's got to be a purpose to wandering around. Yeah, visibility and reassurance. But to be honest, we could have one person in one ward, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and 90% of the residents still won't see them. It's, you know, one person. So I think it's important we keep that level of visibility and reassurance, and each neighbourhood receives a service. But we've got to be a lot more flexible to say, do you know what, this week, today, tomorrow, there's a big issue in Normanton, and that needs 6 of them. And tomorrow there might be a big issue in Stimplin or Allestree or Sponding or wherever that might be. So I want to be using the team more fluidly and more responding to local issues wherever they might be. So to have 17 people wandering around 17 different parts of the city when people need backup, when we need more than one, just doesn't make, it's just not common sense to me. And also I want to get them involved in more projects. So yeah, the reactive work is really important, like Ajit talked about. But you know, if Ajit's got a problem in his ward around 10, 20 streets, well, let's put a month's worth of work to that, and let's get half the PPOs doing that and really hammering it, yeah, rather than working around the edges. So I think we've got to be a lot cleverer. So that's a long-winded answer to your simple question, yeah, Councillor. But I think someone like Zeb, who's got to know the area, he's absolutely fantastic. We need to be able to provide him with as much support as possible.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, Chair.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Pearce, you want to come in with a question?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, Andy, to be quite honest, you've took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say that obviously every ward is different for how you use the PPOs and how the PPOs are going to be used. We've got Carrie in Chad, who's been an absolute godsend, to be quite honest. She's been fantastic. Email her, and within 2 hours, if she's got the time, she gets things done. She replies to you straight away. But I was just about to say that obviously there's some areas in the city, if we are now down to 14, that's going to need 1 or 2 or even 3 at a time. And I think every ward has got to be known that sometimes you won't have your PPO there for a couple of days because they're helping out somewhere else. And I think everyone appreciates that different wards have different problems. Yeah. But I just want to say, it's a pat on the back to the guys there that from what we've seen in Chad over the last few months, it's been absolutely fantastic. Obviously with the COVID stuff, and now we're coming out of that, the response we're getting from the PPOs is great. And just pat on the back to you guys. Yeah. Thank you.
The only thing I'd say, Councillor Pearce, to that is that brilliant, and thanks for that feedback. I want to get to the point where all 17 neighbourhoods, all 51 councillors are telling me that.
Yes.
I don't think that's not the case yet, and that's why we've got to do a bit more work and some of the things I've described. But I think I don't. You know, you talk about Carrie, we talk about Zeb in Normanton. We've got some absolute stars, but we can't be relying just on how good the individual officer is. Yeah, I've got to get the right framework and get the right management and get people motivated and supported, so they're doing that across the city. And that's something I'm excited about. So, but thanks for that feedback. Absolutely,
no problem at all.
No problem. Cheers.
So, Andy, I've got a couple of questions. We've talked about these PPOs and the role that they had and the role that they're going to have. Yeah. Just what powers are they given, and what powers have they got? Because it's all right that we're sending them out there, but if they can't issue tickets for parking on the grass or outside the community, schools and this sort of thing, apart from talking to people, which is a consistent. Is happening consistently currently with the current neighbourhood officers. How are we going to, just what powers do they actually have? Because it's getting rather confusing. This is now. You say we're going to use them for this to continue doing the work that they were supposed to do under different guise or whatever, but the impression I get is they don't seem to have the powers to do anything, and it is a concern. So what powers are they going to actually?
I share your frustration, Councillor Pegg, and again, I'm not going to try and duck out of this one, but it's as of today has been my sort of first day actually in charge. So, but I'm not going to. I'm sort of trying to duck it, aren't it? If I'm honest, but I'll try.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'll stop. I'll stop flanneling. I'll try and answer the question. The powers that they have under the like in terms of crime, antisocial behaviour, environmental protection are very, very clear. So they've got a range of powers to issue fixed penalty notice, community protection notices, community protection warnings for a whole range of different things, and they've got those powers. And I think we work on the principle that we try and engage, we try and educate, and then we enforce. So I'm not retired. I'm not shy about coming forward about enforcement. I think the premise that the service was set up around that whole issue of parking is confusing. We have a parking services in the council that are an award-winning, raise revenue, do a fantastic service. So I've never understood the fit between civil enforcement officers, PPOs. Where does parking lie? Where does the issuing of notices lie? We've got more cameras now outside schools on these vans. We've got problems sort of solving that involves trying to educate. We've got enforcement. There's loads and loads of sort of activity, but I'm not sure how well joined up it is, and I'm not actually sure what powers the PPOs have been given. And they certainly haven't got the right kit electronically to issue fixed penalty notices for parking. So there's a lot of unpicking to do. But I think PPOs should have a role. I don't think they should be primarily responsible for parking issues. I think that should be parking services and the CEOs, but I think they should support them like the neighbourhood officers do when we've got particular problems. So the answer to your question is, Councillor Pegg, I don't know, but I want them to be involved, but I need to unpick it so we're not treading on each other's toes, so we're not duplicating, so we're not acting illegally. So that's something you're going to have to leave with me. And we've had a conversation last week about it. I don't think we're far away from working out a solution to you, and you can share with the rest of the committee. But there's some unpicking to do, if I'm honest.
Well, it does concern me that on the 13th of March 2019, we were told by the cabinet member and the cabinet that these guys were going to be brought in. There was going to be the best thing since sliced bread. There was going to resolve lots of the issues in and around the wards. They're going to have all this power, but I haven't seen any of it actually being used at this current time. Especially with bins on streets and that sort of thing that I've got in my ward. They're going out, yes, and I know they're going out talking to people and they're educating, but my understanding is that they don't have the powers to issue the tickets, and there's I also understand that there's lots of fines still outstanding, and our own legal department won't chase it up because they're not sure whether the tickets are actually that have been issued are actually legal. So all this needs clarifying for us and the residents of Derby.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, certainly when the PPO started, we did a lot of work in Normanton and Arboretum around bins on streets, and that was quite effective. And there was penalty notices issued, and Section 61, is it, notices issued as well. So I think the legal process was straightforward then. Whether something's gone wrong, but again, that's something I need to pick up on. But I think moving forward, what I want to know is if you've got a particular problem in your neighbourhood, and you think the PPOs have got a role to play, or it's their responsibility, then I need to know, because I need to get them out there, and I might need to support them in developing a plan and actually solving that problem. So for me, it's about highlighting those key priorities, and if you're not getting that service and it's not being resolved, then I need, as the leader of that service, I need to know.
Well, it's not. The bins on the streets in our area isn't being resolved.
Right,
That is a fact.
Yeah.
It's been a fact for a long time, 10 years at least, as far as I'm aware. I know Councillor Atwell wants to go in, but I've got another question for you. How are these people going to be funded? Because the original intention was that they would basically fund themselves. So where's the budget coming from now to fund these PPOs?
I think it's clear. You're right. I think it's clear that the original budget identified income streams that are not going to be achievable. So, as I understand it, the current budget situation regarding the PPOs is being put in with the broader conversation around the medium-term financial plan, and will be part of the council's budget. So, I've been told by the leadership of the council that the budget's going to be there for the staff, and they'll be working hard to ensure that any income lost or any income that's not been received is going to be dealt with within the budget. So
that's going to be very interesting. That's going to be very interesting. As already £6 million in debt, so it's going to be another £242,000 on top of that they've got to find. That's for this current year. Then it was projected that next year would be £405,000. So it's quite a lot of money that they've got to find. And I would have liked I must admit, I would have also liked the cabinet member to be present to probably answer some of these questions for us and not leave it with you, Andy. But we can take that up with him at a later date. Yeah. You know, because it is. Go on.
I've been given. I've took over this service in good faith, and I've been given the confidence by the leadership of the council that they're committed to it and they're going to find the budget for it. So, as an officer, as a middle-ranking officer, that's all that's my priority. I'm not going to take over something that's going to be cut within a few months' time, and I'm going to have to go and restructure and make everybody redundant. So I'm confident that the budget's there, but I don't think the problem is now. I think the problem was in that original proposal paper to cabinet that perhaps didn't get the right level of scrutiny at the time.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Atwell, do you want to come?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions, basically. I mean, the biggest questions I get asked by my residents, obviously, with the PPOs, is, the bins have been left out on the streets and nothing's been done. People cycle on footpaths. How many people have been finding? Secondly, the biggest problem we've got in our wards in the schools are, from the feedback I've been getting from residents, is most of the time that people get fined is for when they're throwing their cigarette butts on the floor. What kind of numbers do we have per ward regarding these issues? Have we got anything on hand?
We do have. I've not got them with me, Councillor Atwell, but that's something that I think it was prepared. I think that information was prepared last week or the week before, so I can circulate that with the minutes. But
if you could just put on that, Andrew, regarding news, a lot of people are complaining about news noise. If we just get some figures out there, so obviously we could take something back to our residents. Yeah. Say, look, these are what the comparatives are to each and every other ward.
Yeah, I think just expanding on the question that Councillor Pegg asked, I don't think it's any way to set up or run a public service when you have to have targets for income, whether that be hiding in bushes looking for people parking, waiting for old ladies to drop us some crumbs who are feeding a pigeon. I use the pejorative to make a point. People dropping cigarette butts. Yeah, we have to take cleanliness of the city centre, our district centres, our neighbourhoods seriously. But actually, should we really be picking on people to generate income when we've got nuisance neighbours, people making lives misery for other people? We've got groups of kids hanging around who are scaring old people. We've got nuisance, we've got antisocial behaviour. For me, they're the important things, they're the priorities. And if while they're out and about and they see somebody take the mickey and drop a cigarette butt and don't take the advice, then yeah, issue them with a ticket, absolutely. But should we be going out chasing them? Because if we don't chase them, we don't get the income, I don't keep my job, I lose my mortgage. I don't think that doesn't fit right.
No, it doesn't fit right with me, Andy. But that's what we
That
were
was
led to
sold.
believe. That was it.
Yeah.
That was in the cabinet papers. You know,
Yeah.
we were told this by the cabinet member responsible for it. You know, and that's all we can work on, and what the cabinet actually agreed to and pushed through. And another question that I've got that I'll allow Councillor is the working hours. What's the working hours going to be of these of the PPOs under your management?
Yeah, it'll be 8 till 5. So some will start at 8. Majority will start at 9. We task. So I've introduced daily tasking. So this morning, 9:30, we're all together tasking out the jobs that have come in over the weekend. We need to get a lot better at that, gathering intelligence, gathering information. So they start the working day at 9, get changed, get the kit on, 10-15 minutes tasking, and then out. Some start at 8, finish at 4. Some start at 9, finish at 5. If we have a particular issue that's identified in the evening, we'll change those shift patterns and we'll get volunteers. It's never been a problem to change their shifts to work till 7 or 8 o'clock. During COVID, we had them working Saturday, Sundays, bank holidays as well. So for me, it's about flexibility. You know, often stuff's kicking off in the early evening, isn't it? Especially in the summer.
Well, that's yeah, and weekends. So they will be working weekends as well, will they? On a regular basis, or just when we've got a problem.
Yeah, when we've got a problem. They're not contracted to work weekends, but you know, if we've got a big issue on a Saturday or a Sunday, we'll get volunteers, and they have the Monday off. They take it off as flexi.
Okay, right. Okay, perhaps that's something that we need to.
Yeah.
Probably needs to be looked at, because weekends again is another time when you've got issues and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's probably something that could be looked at in due course, Andy.
Yeah.
Councillor,
I think the problem with weekend working, Councillor, is that we are hamstrung by our terms and conditions. You know, time and a quarter is a big expectation for somebody to give it the weekend. But yeah, I think we've seen their willingness and their enthusiasm and commitment for the last 4 or 5 months, and I think that'll grow as we get them, as we encourage them and motivate them and bring them together. So I don't think weekend workings will be regular, but you know, if it's needed and it's necessary, then I think it's only right.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Atwell, you want to...
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Atwell, sorry, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Andy, I mean, that was heartwarming to hear what you just said earlier. I mean, what I would like you to see you do, obviously, when you're tasking is, a lot of the times, I know the PPOs have got to go out there and do their job, but sometimes when you've got a group of women naturally outside a school, say Bemborough School, and they've dropped a fag nub or whatever, I mean, before we start issuing fines willingly, I mean, I would love to see a bit of a conversation, say, look, we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt this time, but if it carries on, we're going to have to take action, because, yeah, we're all for it, and there's other issues that are much more important that are going on in all different types of ward. And I think sometimes, especially in places like my ward, where there's not a lot of money, and people do feel hard done by when that does happen, and I think we've just got to take that into mind, especially after what's gone on. You know, there's not a lot of money about as it is, and for finding somebody £35-40 for a nub, then we could quite easily just ask them to pick it up. I think that's the way we want to be going forward. I think that'll benefit us, benefit the residents, and obviously that they'll know that, you know what, okay, we got lucky this time, but next time perhaps we might not. You know, just to give them that bit of grace, if that makes sense.
Well, my mantra is engage, educate, enforce. So we engage, we talk to people, we educate, we give them advice, and if those first 2 things don't work, then fine, we enforce, no issue. But we've got to give people some space. We've got to give people the opportunity.
Thank you, Councillor Nawaz.
Yeah, Andy, you know, as you know, our ward is fly tipping. A lot of people fly tipping there, and I've spoken to PPOs and they say, "Oh, we do fine them," but we don't get to know that.
Okay.
You know, they don't advertise it, right? And I think these sort of things should be put on Facebook or Twitter. You know, letting everybody know people are getting fined.
Yeah.
Can you? What do you think about this? It should be.
No, agree fully, Councillor. I think we've got to. For me, this service has got to be, like I said, so close, not just to the neighbourhood teams and the police, but close to councillors. And I think we've got to get the communication better. So I want to get more councillors talking to me and Sharon Booth and the PPOs about issues in their ward, and then we've got to get better at then closing the gap and the loop and telling you what we've done. So for me, it's about communication, and we've got to get a lot better at that. You need to know what I think generally speaking, you know what your neighbourhood officers are doing. Yeah, I'd like to think you are. You know roughly what they're doing, or specifically on a particular job, and we need to get the PPOs doing the same thing. What have you been doing for the last month in my ward? I've done that, I've done this, I've done that. You know, that's about reassurance, but it's also about accountability. So we'll look at a process of how we can communicate back to you, how we do that.
Okay, thank you. And anybody else got a question? So I've got a couple more. If we've not, there was a contribution from Derby Homes, Andy. I mean, you might not know this.
No, I do.
Yeah, where was it approved? And is there or was there a service agreement for the contribution?
It was approved in the cabinet report, I assume, but I don't know that. Service level agreement, don't know. If there isn't one, we need one. Certainly what I've done in the last couple of weeks, and what we need to firm up even more, is that Derby Homes are now supplying the PPO team with jobs, with tasks, issues around tenants, issues around particular aspects of their estates, and that wasn't even happening before. So at least we've now got the PPOs being tasked and getting information and intelligence from Derby Homes, so that they can start to see their value of the contribution and the outcomes that the PPOs are delivering on behalf of Derby Homes. So that's something we need to strengthen a little bit more. But we're certainly in a better place than we were a few months ago. Derby Homes now come to I have a partnership tasking meeting on a Wednesday with the police, Derby Homes, different parts of the council. Derby Homes come to that now, bring issues, bring problems that they need the PPO support with. So I think the relationship is far better. The working relationship is far better, and we'll improve it even more. But yeah, the SLA I think is something that Derby Homes need to understand what they're getting for the money.
Yeah, inputs and outputs.
So
yeah,
that's something we'll pick up on a note of that.
Okay, thank you. Anybody got any further questions they want to ask Andy about the PPOs and the moving forward on this?
Could I just ask Councillor Pegg that a lot of the stuff I've said today is sort of, some of it's historical, some of it's what's been happening this last few weeks, but a lot of it is about moving forward and where we're going to be in the next weeks and months. So I'd like to take, I'm sure you'll agree, but I'd like the opportunity to come back to the next meeting to firm up some of the stuff that we've been talking about, to make sure that we've got that level of accountability. So I assume you were going to ask me, but I'd certainly welcome.
Don't worry about that. You're certainly going to get asked about it.
They let him off with a pass, let them work, didn't they?
I mean, there's lots of stuff that we need that needs to be done with the PPOs, and we've got to make sure that they have got the right powers, because at the moment I don't feel that they have, and I do think to a certain degree the people of Derby have been misled by it all to start off with. Some of the statements have been made, which are clear and are in print everywhere for people to see. It's very disappointing that, as I say, Councillor Smell's not been here tonight to answer some of the questions, because it's under his remit to all this has happened. Because let's be honest about it, if you take even taking the COVID in out of it 3 months, you had over 12 months to get all the legislation and everything in place for these PPOs to come in and take with all the powers that was needed.
Yeah.
And I do think that we
just come in there, Councillor. Obviously, it's not my position to criticise, defend, or whatever political decisions, but I've been quite shocked about some of the gaps that we've got that officers have the responsibility for, and have the duty to deliver. So I think there's been errors made in certainly in my predecessors. There's a lot of work for me to do to repair some of that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Atwell.
Thank you, Chair. I think what we need to do is obviously at the next meeting, once the dates have been set, we could get the Cabinet member present. So obviously whatever questions we've not been able to ask today, we can put them forward and get a bit of an update at the next meeting. So that gives us a bit of a clear indication of where obviously Andy would have been now in the next couple of months. I think it's the next 8 to 10 weeks we meeting, so we can take positive routes from that and see where we are and see how we're going to move on in the right direction. And I'll get a brilliant update from Andy and the Cabinet member at next meeting, if that's okay.
I mean, just to reassure you, I mean, I'm excited by this new challenge, but I'm reassured that it's a good team, it's a good service, they do some good stuff, but we need to be better, and we need to be more joined up. We need to communicate better, and we will. I'm absolutely confident. There's some good people, and we'll get it right. But your feedback is crucial, and the communication is crucial. And one thing, the last thing I will say is, if you've got issues in your ward, talk to your PPO, send it to the PPO inbox, talk to me, talk to Sharon. We need to know what the issues are. I want to get them as busy, as focused, as targeted as possible over the next few weeks. So we need your help.
Andy, just going back to what you just said, I mean, I know we've not got that many PPOs up, but in the wards that the PPOs need the most, can we get some sort of a allocation of a PPO so we've got a direct point of contact just to make life a bit easier? Can that be introduced?
I think the best way at this point in time is to put information into the PPO inbox. Every hour that's looked at. So, your PPO might be off sick, your PPO might be on holiday. Get it into that inbox. We'll get back to you.
That's fine. Okay, that's
efficient route.
Thank you very much for that.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Anybody got any further questions?
I think Shiraz has put something in the box. Have you seen it?
We want our residents in the wards not just to find them. Yeah, we agree with that. And I think that's already been said, that we're going to educate as much as anything, rather than just finding people on the spots or whatever. I think that's been said on more than one occasion.
Yeah.
You happy with that? Okay. If that's nobody's got any further questions, then thanks, Andy.
Thank you, Chair.
Appreciate it, and we'll let you know the date of the next meeting. And if you want to talk to us about anything, please get in touch, and I'm more than happy to call a meeting for you to sit down and talk to us and discuss anything that you think we might be able to help you with. All right.
Appreciate that. Thank you,
okay,
Chair.
Andy. Cheers. Thank you. Bye.
Cheers.
Okay, moving on then with item 6 on the agenda, which is the work programme for the coming municipal year. I've got to find it. Right, it's on it's item 6 on it's basically on the back page. We've not had the flood defences there. We've got a meeting to discuss that. Thanks, Dominic. We've got a meeting to discuss that. I'm not just quite sure of the date, but we have been asked by the officer if we can have just a quick chat with myself and the vice chair, and then we've been asked by Rachel. Forgot her name.
I think it's Tracy.
Tracy, yeah. We was asked by Tracy if we would look at one or two of the issues, like the economic recovery, football, all that, and the waste management. That's various waste policies. That is to do because they're going to change the way that they're looking at changing the way waste is collected in the city, and they've asked us to have a look at that, and apparently it is quite an extensive piece of work. Also, the food law our community safety priorities for basically for each ward and the city in general. So is everybody happy with that? Do they want to add anything, take anything out, or whatever?
I'm happy with that, Chair. That sounds fantastic. Yeah.
All right. And then obviously in January they're going to come forward with more ways. So we'll set all this up and get. And as I say, the waste policies may be slightly longer. Might have a couple of meetings just to discuss that because it's quite an extensive work programme that they're carrying out. But she's asked us to scrutinise it before it goes out to in general notice to everybody. If that's all right with everybody.
Yeah, brilliant.
Okay, thank you for that. On that note, I think that's about it, isn't it? I've got nothing else. I've had no late items.
There's just a message Steve's put on, Chair.
When do you want Andy to come back?
Next meeting.
Is this next meeting? The next meeting said it'll be next month. Stephen.
The next meeting's the 14th of September.
Yeah, next month. 14th. Sorry, Dominic.
Yeah.
So if Andy can come back then, invite him back, please.
Yeah, we'll get in touch with Andy and we'll see whether the 14th, whether that gives him enough time to implement any of the things he's talked about. If that's a bit soon, then we can discuss with him and organise for it to come to one of the other meetings, if that's all right.
He can just give us a brief update anyway on where we are and what we're at with it, because it is. I know it's going to be quite a long piece of work, but at the end of the day, we need to know what's going to be happening with the PPOs and how he's progressed it to a certain degree.
Brilliant. Thank you.
And I'd also like to, I'd like to see the cabinet member present as well, please. I know we did invite him to this meeting.
We'll send an invite to Councillor Smale. Thanks.
Yes, please. Okay, that score then. Thanks everybody for attending. Really appreciate it. I'll see you on the 14th of September.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
And you. Bye. Bye.